You have been told that manifestation starts with asking. You have been taught that the moment you send out your intention, the universe begins to move. But there is something deeper happening beneath the surface. Something that explains why so many people visualize, affirm, imagine, and hope, yet nothing truly changes. The mistake is simple, yet almost universal. You begin the process from the wrong state. You try to manifest while carrying the same emotional frequency that created the situation you want to escape. This is the moment where most people get stuck. You feel the desire for something better. You picture the life you want. You repeat the words that are supposed to activate a new reality. But beneath all of that effort, there is tension, there is fear, there is doubt. There is the quiet whisper that says you do not have what you want. This whisper shapes your frequency far more than your desires do, and the quantum field responds only to frequency, not to longing, not to wanting, not to trying. When you begin the manifestation process from a state of lack, you amplify lack. When you visualize from fear, you amplify fear. When you affirm from desperation, you amplify desperation. Your internal state becomes the signal, and the signal you send becomes the timeline you access. This is why you can spend weeks focusing on what you want and see almost nothing change. You are asking for one reality while vibrating the frequency of another. Many people try to fix this by working harder. They add more techniques. They write more intentions. They force themselves to think positively. They watch for signs and try to interpret every event. But each of these attempts creates pressure, and pressure is not coherence. Pressure is a sign that your internal state is misaligned. When you approach the quantum field with pressure, the field mirrors back the very tension you are trying to escape. You may think your thoughts are the problem, but the deeper issue is the emotional energy behind them. You can think a positive thought with a negative frequency. You can visualize a beautiful future while feeling doubt in your body. The quantum field does not respond to the image in your mind. It responds to the frequency beneath the image. It reads your emotional signature before it reads your intention. This is the common mistake. You believe that asking is the first step. You believe that speaking your desire sets the process in motion. But asking is not step one. Visualization is not step one. Intention is not step one. The first step is the state you enter before you ask. The state you hold before you visualize. The state you embody before you speak your desire. When you begin the process from misalignment, nothing changes. When you begin from the correct state, everything changes. And once you understand what that state is, the entire way you interact with the quantum field transforms. Why the quantum field cannot respond to a misaligned state? You need to understand something fundamental about how the quantum field interacts with you. The field does not respond to your words. It does not respond to your hopes. It does not respond to how badly you want something. It responds only to the coherence of your internal state. When you approach the quantum field from emotional chaos, doubt, fear, or urgency, the field does not punish you. It simply reflects the signal you are sending. A misaligned state produces a misaligned outcome because the field mirrors your frequency with absolute precision. This is why so many people feel stuck. You may think you are doing everything right. You visualize. You write intentions. You try to think positively. But none of these actions matter if your internal state is broadcasting a frequency that contradicts your desire. The field cannot respond to what you say if your emotional signature is saying something completely different. You may believe you are moving toward abundance, but if your body is vibrating scarcity, the field will respond to scarcity. You may believe you are calling in clarity, but if your emotions are tuned to confusion, the field will reflect confusion. Coherence is the language of the quantum field. Coherence means that your mind and your body are communicating the same message. It means your thoughts and your emotions are aligned. It means your desire and your belief are working together, not against each other. When you enter a state of coherence, the quantum field becomes receptive. Your frequency becomes stable. Your signal becomes clear, and reality begins to shift around you. When you are misaligned, your frequency becomes scattered. You may feel hopeful one moment and doubtful the next. You may visualize your future, but internally expect things to stay the same. This internal conflict creates noise in your energetic broadcast. The field cannot interpret a signal that constantly shifts between fear and trust. It does not respond to mixed messages. It responds to consistency. This is why the field cannot respond to you when you are misaligned. You are not sending a clear signal. You are not embodying the identity of the version of yourself who already has what you want. You are operating from the emotional state of the version who does not have it yet. This emotional mismatch creates friction between your intention and your reality. and that friction blocks access to the timeline you are trying to enter. The quantum field is precise. It matches your vibration with mathematical accuracy. When you approach it from coherence, it opens. When you approach it from contradiction, it stays silent. The field is not ignoring you. It is waiting for you to align with the version of yourself who already matches the reality you are asking for. Once you understand this, you can stop blaming yourself for failed manifestations. You can stop thinking the universe is resisting you. You can stop believing that you are doing something wrong. The truth is simple. The field cannot respond to misalignment because misalignment does not carry the frequency of the timeline you desire. And when you begin to change your internal state, you begin to open the door the field could not open for you before. The internal state you hold before you ask, before you speak a single intention, before you visualize a single scene, before you write a single word in a journal, something far more important is already happening inside you. The internal state you hold in the moments before you ask determines everything. It decides which version of the quantum field you connect to. It decides which timeline becomes available. It decides whether your intention opens a door or hits an energetic wall. Most people believe their desire is the beginning. They believe the moment they ask, the process starts. But the truth is that the moment before you ask is the most powerful point in the entire manifestation process. It is the moment when your emotional frequency meets the infinite field of possibilities. It is the moment when your inner world signals the timeline you are prepared to access. If the state you hold before the request is fear, the field reads fear. If it is lack, the field reads lack. If it is doubt, the field reads doubt. You cannot disguise your emotional frequency with words or images. You may speak confidence, but if your body is still carrying tension, insecurity, or survival energy, the field responds to the tension, not the words. Your internal state is the real intention. It is the signal that communicates your readiness better than anything you consciously say. The internal state you hold before asking is also the moment when you reveal your identity to the field. If you feel like someone who does not have what they want, the field mirrors that identity. If you feel like someone who is incomplete, the field reflects incompleteness. But if you shift into the emotional posture of someone who already knows their future is real, the field begins to reorganize itself around that coherence. Your emotional posture becomes the tuning fork for the timeline you want to enter. Your internal state is not just emotion. It is your breath, your posture, your expectations, and the way your nervous system is firing. If your breath is shallow, you are signaling survival. If your posture is tense, you are signaling contraction. If your thoughts are rushed, you are signaling urgency. These signals tell the field that you are not yet in resonance with the version of you who already holds the reality you desire. This is why accessing the correct internal state before you ask is essential. When your breath slows, your nervous system calms. When your body relaxes, your frequency rises. When your mind becomes quiet, you are no longer broadcasting noise. You are broadcasting clarity. And clarity is what the quantum field responds to. When you cultivate the right internal state first, your request is no longer a plea. It is a match. It is no longer a hope. It is a recognition. Your intention stops being a question and becomes a declaration of alignment. The field responds because your state shows that you are already connected to the timeline you are asking for. Before you ask, you must become. Before you request, you must align. Before you speak, you must shift. This is the foundation of quantum access. Coherence, the real language of the quantum field. To interact with the quantum field in a way that produces real change, you must understand the language it speaks. The field does not understand words. It does not respond to mental images alone. It does not react to how badly you want something or how vividly you try to imagine it. The only language the quantum field responds to is coherence. Coherence is the alignment of your thoughts, your emotions, your body, and your identity. When these elements move together, your frequency becomes steady and clear. And that clarity is what the quantum field recognizes. Coherence is not positivity. It is not pretending to feel good. It is not forcing yourself to believe something when your body feels the opposite. Coherence is the state in which your internal world is united. It is when your mind stops arguing with your emotions. It is when your body stops fighting your intentions. It is when your identity begins to match the reality you are trying to access. In coherence, everything inside you communicates the same signal. That signal acts like a key. When the key is aligned, the field responds immediately. Not because you convinced it, but because your frequency finally matches the timeline you want. When you are incoherent, the key does not turn. Your thoughts say one thing. Your emotions say another. Your body holds on to past energy. Your identity remains trapped in old beliefs. This inner conflict creates noise that blocks access to higher possibilities. Think of coherence as harmony. When an orchestra plays out of tune, the sound is chaotic and unpleasant. But when every instrument plays in alignment, the music becomes powerful and unmistakable. Your inner world works the same way. When your internal instruments are out of tune, your signal is fractured. When they are aligned, your signal becomes strong enough to reach the timeline that already holds your desired experience. Your heart plays the central role in coherence. The electromagnetic field of the heart is stronger than the field of the brain. When your heart and mind are aligned, your entire system enters a state of balance. In this state, your intentions become more than thoughts. They become frequencies broadcast into the quantum field. You are no longer forcing reality. You are communicating with it. Coherence also stabilizes your identity. When you shift into coherence, you begin to embody the version of yourself who already lives the future you want. You breathe differently. You think differently. You move differently. These changes are not superficial. They are the signs that your inner world is tuning itself to a new timeline. When your identity stabilizes, the field responds consistently. You cannot fake coherence. You cannot rush it. You cannot bypass your emotions to reach it. Coherence comes from honesty with yourself. It comes from allowing your feelings to move through you until they settle into clarity. It comes from quieting the mind until you feel connected to your own presence. It comes from choosing the emotional signature of your future self instead of repeating the patterns of your past. When you understand coherence, manifestation stops being a struggle. You are no longer trying to force outcomes. You are matching frequencies. You are aligning with what is already yours. The quantum field responds because you are finally speaking its language. Why desire without alignment blocks your timeline? You may believe that desire is enough to move energy. You may think that wanting something deeply shows the universe how serious you are. You may feel that intensity should speed up your manifestation. But the truth is that desire without alignment does not move you closer to the timeline you want. In many cases, it pulls you further away. The reason is simple. Desire and alignment are not the same. Desire often amplifies the feeling of not having what you want. Alignment brings you into resonance with the version of you who already has it. When desire is rooted in lack, it becomes a signal of separation. You want something because you feel the distance between you and the experience. You want something because your current reality does not contain it. This emotional state sends a clear message to the quantum field. It says you are not aligned with the timeline where your desire is real. The field mirrors that emotional truth. It responds to the absence you feel, not the desire you express. Desire becomes a block when it is filled with urgency. When you feel like you must have something now, you activate the emotional state of insufficiency. You send a signal of desperation rather than coherence. This urgency narrows your perception. It tightens your energy. It keeps you in the identity of someone who is reaching instead of someone who is receiving. The quantum field does not respond to urgency because urgency vibrates at a frequency that does not match the timelines of stability, clarity, or abundance. Another reason desire creates blocks is that it often comes from the mind, not the body. The mind wants outcomes quickly. It wants control. It wants certainty. But the body carries emotional memories from the past. If the body still vibrates fear, insecurity, or scarcity, your desire will be overshadowed by your emotional truth. The mind may want something new, but the body continues to signal the old identity. Until the body shifts, the field will not respond. Desire can also create attachment. When you obsess over an outcome, you place it on a pedestal. You elevate it to the point where it feels bigger than you. This creates a power imbalance inside you. You begin to believe the future you want is more powerful than your current ability to access it. You separate yourself from the timeline instead of merging with it. Attachment blocks access because it reinforces the belief that the desired reality is not yet yours. Alignment, on the other hand, feels different. Alignment is quiet. Alignment is steady. Alignment carries no urgency. It does not reach. It resonates. When you are aligned, your desire transforms into knowing. The future no longer feels distant. It feels familiar. It feels like a memory waiting to be lived. In alignment, your body and mind agree. Your emotional signature matches the timeline you want. And the quantum field responds immediately because coherence has replaced longing. Desire without alignment blocks your timeline because it vibrates the frequency of not having. But when you shift from desire into alignment, you stop asking for the future. You step into it. The emotional trigger that opens the field. There is a moment in the manifestation process that does not come from thought, intention, or visualization. It comes from emotion. This moment is the emotional trigger that opens the quantum field. It is the instant when your internal state shifts into a frequency that aligns with your desired timeline. This emotional trigger is more powerful than any technique. It is the point where the field begins to respond because your energy has changed from the inside out. The emotional trigger is not dramatic. It does not always arrive with excitement, intensity, or overwhelming passion. Most of the time, it feels subtle. It feels like a quiet release, a gentle opening, a soft inhale that brings you back to yourself. It feels like a moment of clarity where everything inside you lines up. This moment is the first real step of quantum access. It is the turning point where your emotions stop reflecting your past and begin reflecting your future. The emotional trigger works because emotion is the body's language. The body does not respond to thoughts alone. It responds to feeling. When you experience the emotional signature of your future self, even for a few seconds, the body begins to believe that the future is possible. Once the body believes, your frequency shifts. This shift changes the signal you send into the quantum field. You stop broadcasting survival energy and start broadcasting alignment. The emotional trigger often shows up as a moment of peace. Not forced peace, but natural peace. It may come as a sense of relief, like a weight lifting off your chest. It may come as a steady confidence that does not need proof. It may come as gratitude for a future that has not yet appeared physically, but feels real in your emotional. This emotional shift is the key that unlocks the field. The field responds not to the emotion itself, but to the frequency generated by that emotion. When the emotional trigger activates, something important happens. Your nervous system moves out of survival mode. Your body stops preparing for danger and starts aligning with possibility. Your mind becomes more open. Your intuition becomes sharper. Your decisions become clearer. This is the moment when the timeline you want becomes accessible. Before this emotional shift, you were trying to reach the future from the identity of the past. After the emotional shift, you are reaching it as the version of you who is ready. This emotional trigger is also the moment where identity changes. You stop being the version of yourself who hopes things will improve. You become the version who feels the future as something natural and familiar. Identity shift is what signals the field. When your identity changes, the field responds as if the reality you desire is already in motion. The emotional trigger that opens the field is not something you chase. It is something you allow. When you create space in your mind and body, the trigger emerges naturally. It rises the moment your inner world enters coherence. It appears when your emotions begin to match the timeline you are ready to step into. This is the moment the field hears you. This is the moment the shift begins. How the body must believe before the mind. There is a reason you can repeat affirmations for months and still feel stuck. There is a reason you can visualize every day and see no real change. There is a reason you can intellectually understand a new reality, yet continue to live the same old patterns. The reason is simple. Your mind can believe something intellectually long before your body believes it emotionally. And in the quantum field, the body speaks first. The field responds to the emotional truth of your body before it responds to the thoughts in your mind. Your mind can imagine abundance while your body still vibrates scarcity. Your mind can picture confidence while your body still holds memories of insecurity. Your mind can ask for a new beginning while your body still reacts from old wounds. This mismatch creates an incoherent signal. The field hears the body more clearly than the mind because the body's emotional frequency is stronger, deeper, and more consistent. The body state becomes your real broadcast. This is why embodiment is essential. You must create an emotional environment in your body that aligns with the future you want. The future self you desire already has an emotional signature. That version of you feels different in the body. You can imagine success, but if your chest feels tight, if your breath is shallow, if your stomach is tense, your body is not aligned with that reality. It is still preparing for the life you no longer want. The body holds memories. It stores every fear, disappointment, and emotional pattern you have repeated. It becomes conditioned to react in predictable ways. When you ask the quantum field for a new reality while your body is anchored in the past, the field receives a mixed signal. Until the body shifts, the timeline cannot shift. The emotional frequency of the body must change before the future can change. This is why the emotional trigger matters. It begins to retrain the body. When you allow yourself to feel the emotional signature of your future self, your body starts to respond. Your breathing deepens, Your muscles release. Your chest opens. Your nervous system calms. These physical changes are not small. They are evidence that your internal frequency is rising. The body is beginning to believe what the mind has been trying to imagine. Once the body believes, everything accelerates. Your decisions shift. Your habits shift. Your reactions shift. You stop repeating the same patterns because your emotional baseline has changed. The future timeline becomes accessible because your physical frequency finally matches it. The body is the gateway because the body is your transmitter. When the body enters coherence, the mind follows. Thoughts naturally adjust to match the new emotional state. You begin to think from your future, not about your future. This is the moment when manifestation transforms into access. You are no longer trying to convince yourself. You are beginning to embody the version of you who already knows. When the body believes first, the field responds instantly. The shift becomes inevitable because the emotional truth inside you finally aligns with the reality waiting for you in the quantum field, shifting identity before shifting reality. Every timeline available to you in the quantum field is connected to a specific version of your identity. Each version of you thinks differently, feels differently, responds differently, and carries a unique emotional signature. This means you cannot step into a new reality while holding on to the identity of the old self. Reality does not shift first. Identity shifts first. When your identity changes, reality has no choice but to reorganize around the new version of you. Your identity is not the personality you show the world. It is not your name, your role, or your history. Your identity is the internal state you return to day after day. It is the emotional baseline you live in. It is the beliefs you hold about yourself and what you think is possible for you. If your identity is rooted in limitation, you will access timelines filled with limitation. If your identity is grounded in expansion, you will access timelines aligned with growth. The quantum field responds to who you are being, not who you hope to become. When your identity is tied to past experiences, your mind and body constantly recreate the same emotional patterns. You repeat behaviors because they match the identity you have been carrying. You make decisions from the familiar emotional state of your past self. This keeps you locked in a loop, not because the universe is resisting you, but because your identity is broadcasting the frequency of a timeline you are trying to leave. To shift timelines, you must shift your identity first. This does not happen through force. It happens through recognition. You begin by noticing the emotional patterns that belong to the old self. Patterns of fear, patterns of doubt, patterns of hesitation. As you observe them without merging with them, you create space for a new identity to emerge. The moment you stop reacting from your past identity, you weaken its influence. Your frequency begins to rise. A new identity is not created. It is accessed. The version of you who already lives the life you desire exists in the quantum field. That version thinks differently and feels differently. When you tune into the emotional signature of that version, you begin to shift your identity. Your thoughts change because they are no longer fueled by fear. Your emotions change because they are no longer shaped by survival. Your choices change because they come from a higher internal state. Identity shift often begins as a subtle sensation. You feel less attached to old limitations. You feel more open to possibilities. You stop asking for proof and start relying on resonance. You no longer feel like someone trying to manifest. You feel like someone accessing what is already aligned with your frequency. This is the moment the new identity stabilizes. When your identity shifts, your reality must shift. The field reflects your new frequency through opportunities, synchronicities, insights, and changes in perception. You begin to see evidence of your new timeline not because you forced it, but because your identity finally matches the version of you who belongs there. Shifting identity is not the final step. It is the doorway. And once you step through it, the reality you desire begins to reveal itself. The exact moment the field begins to respond. There is a precise moment when the quantum field begins to respond to you. It is not when you visualize. It is not when you close your eyes and repeat an affirmation. It is not when you write your intention with perfect clarity. The moment the field responds is the instant your internal frequency shifts into alignment with the timeline you want to access. This shift can happen quietly. It can happen in seconds. It can happen even before you fully realize what has changed. But the field feels it immediately. The moment the field begins to respond is the moment your emotional state no longer reflects your past. Instead, it begins to reflect the future you are accessing. Your breath deepens. Your mind softens. Your body relaxes. Your identity expands. This shift may feel subtle, but it is powerful. It is the point where your signal becomes coherent enough to create a measurable change in your energetic broadcast. You are no longer vibrating the frequency of who you have been. You are vibrating the frequency of who you are becoming. This moment is not intellectual, it is emotional. The shift does not happen when you convince your mind. It happens when your body accepts a new emotional truth. You may experience a sense of certainty without evidence. You may feel grounded without knowing why. You may sense openness where there was once tension. These sensations are signs that your nervous system has stepped out of survival mode and into alignment. Your frequency rises instantly because the emotional signature of your future self has begun to awaken inside you. The field begins to respond when your inner world becomes stable. Not perfect, stable. Stability means your emotional state stops fluctuating between belief and doubt. It means your signal remains coherent long enough for the field to reflect it. When you reach this stability, the future timeline locks in. You begin to feel like you are walking towards something real rather than imagining something far away. Your actions feel guided. Your intuition becomes sharper. You sense a pull instead of a push. Another sign the field is responding is that your perception changes. You start noticing things you were blind to before. Opportunities appear where none existed. People respond to you differently. Ideas flow more easily. Your environment begins to reorganize itself in small but meaningful ways. These are not coincidences. They are reflections of your new frequency. Reality is adjusting to the identity you have stepped into. The moment the field responds is also the moment resistance weakens. You stop feeling the emotional weight of your old patterns. You stop fighting your past. You stop questioning your worthiness. This release creates space inside you. In that space, the future timeline begins to unfold. You feel a sense of inevitability. Not because you are forcing anything, but because your frequency now matches the reality you have been trying to access. The field responds when you embody coherence. It responds when your identity aligns. It responds when your emotional signature matches the timeline you desire. This moment is the turning point. It is the beginning of a new reality. And once it happens, the shift cannot be undone. Applying the emotional trigger in real scenarios. To integrate this understanding into your life, you need to see how the emotional trigger works in real situations. The emotional shift is not something abstract. It is not something reserved for meditation or quiet moments. It is something you apply in the exact circumstances where you usually fall back into old patterns. When you bring the emotional trigger into real scenarios, you begin to experience how quickly your timeline can change. Imagine you are facing a challenge that normally triggers anxiety. Maybe it is a financial situation, a conversation, a decision, or an opportunity that feels overwhelming. In that moment, your old identity would activate. Your breath would tighten. Your thoughts would become reactive. Your chest would close. Your body would prepare for the familiar emotional pattern. But this is the moment to apply the emotional trigger. Instead of falling into the habitual state, you pause. You breathe deeply. You allow the emotion of your future self to take the lead. You use the signature of calm, clarity, or confidence as your anchor. The body reacts quickly to this shift. When you activate the emotional trigger, even for a few seconds, your nervous system recalibrates. Your thoughts slow down. Your perception expands. The problem you are facing begins to look different because you are now perceiving it from a higher internal state. This is how reality begins to rearrange itself. You are not waiting for the world to shift first. You are shifting internally, which forces a new timeline to open. Another scenario is when you want something, but feel the old emotions of lack rising. Normally, you would try to push the feeling away or override it with affirmations, but overriding does not create coherence. Applying the emotional trigger means acknowledging the emotion without merging with it. You let the old feeling surface while holding the frequency of the future self in your body. This dual awareness dissolves the old pattern. Your emotional energy becomes lighter and more aligned. You can also apply the emotional trigger in moments of decision. Every choice carries a frequency. When you act from fear, you choose paths that belong to your old timeline. When you act from the emotional signature of your future self, you choose paths that match your new reality. Before making a decision, you pause and feel the emotional state of the version of you who is already living the future you want. You let that version make the decision. This is how you shift identities in real time. Relationships are another powerful place to apply the trigger. If you normally react with defensiveness, insecurity, or withdrawal, you take a moment to breathe into your body. You feel the emotional posture of your future self. When you respond from this elevated state, the relationship dynamic changes instantly. because you are no longer acting from your past identity. You become a catalyst for a new timeline. Applying the emotional trigger is not about perfection. It is about practice. Each time you shift your emotional state in real life, you reinforce the frequency of your future self. You teach your body a new way of being. And as the body learns, the quantum field responds with greater precision. Real scenarios become the training ground where your new timeline begins to anchor itself. Daily protocol for quantum access. To maintain alignment with the timeline you desire, you need a simple and consistent daily protocol. This protocol is not about discipline or pressure. It is about creating an emotional environment inside your body that supports the frequency of your future self. When you repeat this process consistently, the shift becomes natural. You no longer have to force coherence. You begin to live from it. Your protocol begins the moment you wake up. Before you check your phone, before you think about your to-do list, and before you react to anything external, you bring your attention to your body. You notice your breath. You feel the weight in your chest or the openness in your heart. You observe your internal state without judgment. This awareness helps you understand which version of yourself woke up that morning. Awareness is the first step toward alignment. Next, you connect with the emotional signature of your future self. You do not need to visualize anything complex. You simply tune into the feeling. Maybe it is calm. Maybe it is confidence. Maybe it is clarity. You breathe into that feeling. You allow your body to remember it. Even if the emotion is faint, you hold it gently. This emotional recall begins to shift your frequency before your mind fully wakes up. After establishing the emotional state, you set your identity for the day. You silently choose who you are going to be. You choose the version of yourself who is aligned with the timeline you are stepping into. This identity may speak differently. It may walk differently. It may expect different outcomes. As you choose this identity, your nervous system adjusts. You begin to embody the energetic posture of your future self. Throughout the day, your protocol continues with small moments of recalibration. Each time you feel yourself falling into old emotional patterns, you pause. You breathe slowly and deeply. You return to the emotional signature of your future self. This pause is powerful because it interrupts the old timeline. It stops your body from reenacting memories from the past. Every recalibration strengthens the new frequency. You also practice coherence through micro-decisions. Every choice, no matter how small, carries a frequency. When you choose from fear, you reinforce your old identity. When you choose from alignment, you stabilize your new one. Before acting, you ask yourself one simple question. What would the version of me who already lives my desired timeline do right now? This question shifts your energy instantly. It turns daily life into a continuous experience of alignment. Another part of your protocol is evening integration. At night, you reflect on your emotional state throughout the day. You do not judge yourself. You observe where you stayed aligned and where you slipped back into old patterns. This reflection teaches your body what coherence feels like. Your nervous system learns to recognize stability. You end the day by reconnecting to the emotional signature of your future self, creating a bridge between today and tomorrow. With this daily protocol, quantum access becomes a natural state. You no longer wait for big moments to shift your frequency. You align continuously. You live inside the field instead of visiting it. And as your consistency grows, the timeline you desire becomes the timeline you inhabit. Underscore, as you reach the final stage of this journey, something inside you begins to settle. You start to understand that the transformation you were searching for was never about forcing reality to change. It was about learning to shift the frequency from which your life emerges. The process of accessing the quantum field is not about effort. It is about alignment. And alignment becomes sustainable only when you integrate the emotional, mental, and energetic shifts into your daily experience. Integration is the moment when everything you have learned moves from theory into embodiment. It is when your awareness becomes your default state rather than an occasional practice. You begin to recognize the subtle signals of misalignment more quickly. You feel when your breath becomes shallow. You notice when your thoughts fall into old patterns. You sense when your identity tries to return to familiar emotions. But instead of becoming trapped in these patterns, you realign with ease. You return to coherence without resistance. Stabilizing a new frequency is not about perfection. It is about repetition. Each time you choose the emotional signature of your future self, you reinforce the neural and energetic pathways that connect you to the timeline you desire. Each time you pause instead of reacting, your nervous system learns a new rhythm. Each time you choose clarity over confusion, you strengthen the identity of your future self. These repetitions accumulate until the new frequency feels natural. You no longer have to try. You simply are. As the new frequency stabilizes, you begin to notice shifts in your external life. They may appear subtle at first. A conversation that flows more easily, a decision that feels clearer, an opportunity that aligns effortlessly with your direction. These moments are confirmations. They reflect the internal coherence you have reached. The quantum field is responding because you have become consistent in your alignment. You are broadcasting a clear and stable frequency that matches the timeline you chose. Integration also brings a new relationship with uncertainty. Instead of fearing the unknown, you begin to trust it. You understand that uncertainty is not a threat. It is space. It is the opening through which new timelines emerge. You no longer cling to outcomes or force solutions. You allow the timeline to unfold because you know your frequency is guiding it. You walk with a kind of inner confidence that does not depend on external proof. This confidence is the signature of your stabilized identity. The final stage of integration is embodiment. Embodiment means your future self is no longer a concept. It is who you are now. Your decisions reflect it. Your emotions reflect it. Your presence reflects it. You become a living expression of the timeline you accessed. When you reach this level of embodiment, the quantum field responds instantly because you are no longer shifting into alignment. You live in alignment. This is the completion of the cycle. You began with misalignment. You learned coherence. You activated the emotional trigger. You shifted your identity. You accessed a new timeline, now you stabilize it. And as you stabilize it, your new reality becomes inevitable. If this message resonated with you, subscribe now to stay connected with the energy that awakens you. Like this video to anchor this frequency in your field. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a transmission that your spirit needs. And comment below, I am the frequency. Let the universe hear your voice. You're not here by chance. You're here to rise and remember who you truly are.